to Minerva. Today I am going to share with you one of my favourite fabrics. It's from our core range and it's a Duchess Satin. It's our Classique Duchess Satin. It comes in a really wide range of colours. It's 100% polyester and it's 150 centimetres wide, which make it really great when you're trying to make circular skirts or have large panels where you don't want any seams. It's a really, really beautiful fabric. It's a heavyweight satin. We describe it as mid-weight, but for a satin, it really has got some kind of weight and depth to it, which means, let me just unroll this a minute, it really drapes beautifully. It's not going to gather particularly well because it's quite thick, but it will pleat beautifully, and if you make a structured garment out of it, it's going to hang and keep its shape really well. You can see here it's got a lovely sheen to it. It's not shiny, so it's not really kind of bright shine, it's more of a subtle shine, so it's a really lovely sheen that as you move the fabric around or as you're wearing the fabric is going to reflect the light really beautifully. Now, there are a few things about satin that I want you to know about before you start working with it. So, I would use a really fine machine needle, maybe a 10 or a 70 if you're using the other measurement, or even a 9. You might even want to try a Microtex needle because that's got a really sharp point to it. And I found when I was using Duchess Satin that using a walking foot really helped keep my seams really nice and even, and meant that I didn't get any puckers. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't use just your normal machine foot, but I found that there was a really big difference between using machine foot and using a walking foot. So it just helped, kind of made a better seam. The other thing is when you're pressing, you need to be really careful not to put your iron flat onto your seam allowance so it leaves an indentation on the right side of your fabric. So what I did was I had my rolling pin, I put a tea towel over my rolling pin and popped that under my fabric so that when I was pressing my seam from the wrong side, the seam allowance just fell away from my stitch line where I was pressing, because I was over at the curve of the rolling pin, and that just helped me get a good pressed finish without getting any indentation of the seam allowance on the right side. The other thing that I do when I'm working with a satin is I treat it as a one-way fabric. So I will cut all my pattern pieces travelling the same way down the fabric so that I don't get any shading at all. Because it's such a shiny fabric, that just can happen. So you just need to be a little bit careful with that. So they're my top tips for making. So in the Classique range, we've got lots and lots of beautiful colours. I'm going to share 5 colours that I think would work well for special occasion wear or for evening wear, and then I'm going to focus in on 4 colours which are more bridal tones. And the reason I'm going to do that for you is recently when I was trying to find a Duchess Satin suitable for a wedding dress, I found it really difficult to pin down the specific shade from one range to another. Just because something's called ivory or champagne doesn't mean that in another colour, in another quality of fabric, it's going to be exactly the same shade. And I found that really difficult and ended up with lots and lots of swatches, probably enough to make a whole wedding dress by the time I'd done. So I'm going to focus on these 4 and compare and contrast them and try and make it a bit clearer to you, the shade and the colour of these 4 particular fabrics from this range. So the first colour I'm going to share with you is this lovely cerise pink. In our colour range, it's called fuchsia, and it's a lovely bright cerise pink. It's got a really lovely depth of tone to it. You might refer to it as a shocking pink. And it's a colour that I think works really well in Duchess satin because the sheen is really complemented by this strong colour. And you can see as I move it around here that it really catches the light and looks really luxurious. So just moving away from the bright colours just for a moment, I wanted to share this, just lovely, gorgeous, soft mauve with you. It's our colour Lilac Rose, and it's a really soft mauvey lilac, really, really pretty colour, and again works really well on this Duchess satin, giving you a really beautiful depth of colour and really reflecting the colour with the sheen of the satin. If you're looking for a really rich dark red, this is our claret colour. It's a really beautiful deep tone, would work really well for bridal, complementing the bride, or it would work really well for evening wear, particularly around Christmas time. And again, you can see the difference in tone you get as I move the fabric, where the light's reflecting on the satin weave. You can see it's different tones of this really rich red, but where the light catches it, you get this brighter shade popping up. This is another beautiful jewel colour. We call it teal. You might describe it as a peacock green or a deep turquoise. It's a really beautiful bright colour, and you can see again as I move it around, you can see the different tones you get depending on how the light catches that fabric. But beautiful for special occasion wear and evening wear. And finally in this section, I wanted to include a navy. This is a really good navy. I'd say it's a mid-navy. It's not too dark, but it is a really smart, classic navy. And again, because you've got that light refracting off of the surface of the satin, it doesn't appear too heavy because you've got that kind of lightness breaking up the surface qualities of the fabric. And it is a really nice shade and would be a great colour for evening wear. Okay, so here are the 4 classic bridal shades that I just wanted to share with you, to put them next to one another so that you could see the differences between them in this Classique range. So I'm going to start off with the lightest one. This one is called Porcelain, and it's a soft white is what I'd call it. It's a really pretty bridal shade, but it is definitely more white than ivory, but it's not that brilliant white. It's a really pretty soft white. So if you're looking for something that's lighter from ivory and doesn't have that creamy tone to it, Porcelain might be a really good choice for you. And you can see there, I'll just move it around so you can see the colour of it as it's reflected. It's a really pretty colour. The next one I've got is we call ivory, and you can see, if I just bring the porcelain back a little minute, you can see the difference in the two. This is more of a, I guess it's got a yellowy tone to it. It's a really nice colour, but it is slightly darker than the porcelain. I'd say maybe this is more of a classic bridal colour. You can see there it is really pretty, and it's just got that slightly warmer yellowy tone to it when you compare it from the porcelain that we first looked at. So slightly darker, but still your classic ivory bridal colour. The next one I've got here is called Champagne. Now, I found when I was looking for a bridal colour, Champagne took on many, many different shades. So we'll just have a little look at this one here. So I've got my Champagne here in the middle, and I'm just going to put the porcelain above it and the ivory below it. So you can see again, we're going to a much warmer tone here. This particular Champagne has, I'd say, kind of a little bit of a peachy tone to it. Let me just open it up so you can see it a little bit better. So it's got a slight peachy tone to it, or warmer tone to it than the first two that we looked at. But again, it is a really pretty shade. And I will show you these all again together in a minute. So that's our Champagne. And then finally, I've got a colour here. Let me just move that one out of the way. I've got a colour here that we're calling Nude. Now, I assume they're referring to much more of a kind of European skin tone when they're thinking about the nude colour. It's a very soft, peachy terracotta-y colour. So if I put my hand down next to that, you can see that it's quite similar tone, I guess, to a European skin colour. So again, it's a colour that could be used in bridal, but it's a much deeper tone. So I just wanted to show you all those four colours together in a piece so that you can just see them again. So here we go, just working around. This is the first one that we looked at. This is the porcelain colour and the lightest one that we looked at. It's the soft white. Then we've moved around to our ivory, which had a bit more of a yellowy tone to it, or a warmer tone to it, moving on from the porcelain. Then we've got our Champagne, that again you can see, again it's getting warmer, it's got much more of a peachy tone in it when you compare it to the ivory and the porcelain. And finally we have our Nude, which has more peach in it again when you look at it compared to the Champagne. So I hope that you found looking at those bridal tones in more detail really helpful. So let's look at what patterns would successfully work in the Duchess Satin. I've got 3 dress patterns to look at with you, and the first one of those is Cashmerette's Upton dress. Now the reason I've chosen this is the pleated skirt will hold its pleats really well with this fabric. The pleats on the Upton dress are really nice deep pleats. So if you imagine, let me just mock a few up here for you. If you imagine you've got those pleats hanging down, oops, there you go, hanging down from your waistline, you can see how well that looks, and you get the light and shade with those pleats. Also, the bodice of this dress has got really simple princess styling. With the Duchess Satin, because you've got the highly reflective surface, you want to keep your seam lines to a minimum so that any kind of difference you get in shading because of the seaming isn't really apparent. So I felt that this was a really good style because you've got your seam line set to the side of the bust on the bodice and a nice structured fitted bodice, which is going to be great in this lovely heavyweight satin. And then you've got the pleated skirt that's going to hang really beautifully in big folds. The next option I'm going to share with you comes from Charm Patterns, and it's the Lamorna dress. Now this pattern I think is really great value for money because you've got a circular skirt that's going to really work well when it falls into the drapes of the circular skirt. It's going to hold a really lovely shape around the body. Or you've got a straighter skirt with a waterfall front. So you've got 2 different skirt options you have with this pattern. And then you've got lots of different bodice adaptations and styles. So you can really mix and match this pattern together to make your own design. And I think it would look fabulous made up in this lovely tealy green colour. And I think the pattern itself is great, the way you can adapt it to suit your needs and suit your styling and suit your body shape. So the Lamorna dress is certainly one that I'd look at to go with the Duchess Satin. So my final option for a dress pattern that matches really well with our Duchess Satin is a McCaw's pattern. It's McCaw's 7599, and it is a vintage pattern. So it comes from 1953, that classic era of the designer Dior, and it has a beautiful circular skirt, which is again going to look really beautiful, hanging in folds and reflecting the light. And then you've got 2 different bodice options. And I think for a summer wedding or maybe a garden party, that's going to be a perfect combination. So I just wanted to share a couple of options with you that weren't dresses. The first one is from New Look, and it's a fitted waistcoat. It's their pattern number 6914, and it's a really lovely fitted waistcoat. So you can use this fabric to create a really nice curved structure around the body, and I think it's going to fit and lie really well. The pattern comes with and without a collar, so you might want to contrast 2 colours together to make the colours stand out and make a statement piece, and I think that would work really well with this pattern. So the last pattern I want to share with you is another New Look pattern, and this time it's a bomber jacket. So the pattern number is 6545, and the reason I think this pattern would work really well is the raglan sleeve. If you're trying to set in sleeves with this fabric, because it's quite thick, it could be uncomfortable and it could be difficult to get a really nice smooth finish around a set-in sleeve. But because this pattern has a raglan sleeve that's coming from the neckline to the underarm, it eliminates that. So I think that it would work really well. And you could either use just one colour and maybe a contrast or a matching rib, or you could start to combine your colours, and the fabric amount options are on the pattern for you to use one colour for the sleeve and one colour for the body of the garment. And I think this fabric would look really beautiful in a luxy bomber jacket and give a really nice chic look. So I hope you found this little video helpful. I've tried to include as much information as I can about manufacturing techniques to make sure that you get a perfect garment. I've tried to talk about the fabrics, how the colours appear, how the fabric handles and its quality, so you've got a really good idea about our Classique Duchess Satin. And then the patterns that I've chosen just gives you food for thought about the types of pattern to choose, the design elements to look for in a pattern, and maybe some to avoid that wouldn't suit this particular fabric. As always, please share your makes with us on the Minerva website. Our community love to see what you've been making. We love to see what you've been making. Until I speak to you again, my name's Joan Ellis, and happy stitching.